I did have to go into the back room and compose myself because it was a lot at the time. You know, the event was running, if you think about it, we were running 10 tracks at the same time. You've got people online not being able to connect and everything's going through you. There's 400 speakers. So we had to completely switch in 48 hours to a hybrid event. And I had 50 or 60 speakers cancelling. We were all in the same boat. We could come together, we could respond quickly to our customers and we could deliver something. I think the other point is around just moving forward. I always have this attitude of whatever you do, make sure that you're progressing, make sure you're moving forward.
Meet Daniel Boyle, General Manager of Transport at Terrapin. For over a decade, Daniel has connected thousands of transport executives through award-winning global events. He's led the World Aviation Festival from 250 attendees in 2013 to over 5,000 in 2022. His expertise spans digitalization, customer experience, and much more, making him a key figure in the industry.
Going from daylight to darkness, not being able to sleep, tiredness, food, all that plays such a factor in someone's behavior. How can you best give them the need that they don't have to feel that they're being disruptive?
Handling all sorts of calls, cancellations, complaints. And I think, that gives a bit of a thicker skin and a bit more. And also it gave me a good perspective on what I wanted to do.
Welcome everyone back to the Flying High Club podcast, Series 1. Again, what a great time we're having, and we are now on episode 9, bringing it up near enough the close of season 1, but we have some huge news coming for you, and we're going to just hold off on that, and you'll hear some news coming on that's really soon. But today is a really important one, and you'll see why when we talk about this later on. My guest today plays a pivotal role in how the aviation community talks and discusses its future of its industry. There are very few means to be able to communicate other than your conventional challenge, but there are very few events that go on that bring this community all together to discuss how great it is and how great it can become. And my guest today is the GM for travel of Terrapin, who put on the greatest and the best aviation conference in industry. It's Daniel Boyle, thank you. Thanks for coming.
Thanks for having us.
No problem. I mean, it's a pleasure to have you, and thank you so much for making the time. And I wasn't putting it lightly. You put on what is now the greatest show in aviation. Everyone looks forward to.
We do our best.
That's all we can ask. We can ask. But before we dive into that, I've been to this event over and over for a number of years now. And it's radically changed. I've seen it grow in size. I've seen it grow in stature. I've seen the presence. And it's gone from what would people be doing, it's just another small conference, to it's the conference, right? So hats off for getting there. Now, I want to cover that story of how you got there. But just before that, people don't realize how many cogs there are in the travel and aviation space, right? Yep. Generally, people ask, okay, someone who does events, what have they got to do anything with the aviation and travel sector? That's something.
It's a fair question.
Definitely want to know. I don't know. It's an answer that we would definitely want, but it does play a key part because there isn't that ability to communicate around other than your IATA conferences or your sort of industry body conferences. But there is a ton of stuff that happens behind the scenes which we want to uncover as well, because we're not the easiest place to work with. Aviation is not the easiest sector to work in. I'm sure there's enough challenges around. We want to hear all about that. But before that, I want to dive into your past of how did you get into this space, the event management space, and then how did that sort of niche of travel, as it were, come about? Was that a passion project? Was that just a business decision? How did that come about? But first, I want to talk about yourself, Dan. What about you? What was your sort of story in getting into this space?
Well, I'm unique in a way in this industry in that I'm not an OG aviation geek, as it were.
Yeah.
I started working in design, so I'm very much from that background where I was working creating websites and creating brands, logos, all that kind of stuff.
Nice.
And then I moved to London, and it turns out there was a lot of other designers in London.
So talk about moving to like the competitive capital.
Yeah. So I came back from traveling, moved to London for a special girl who is
Always women, isn't it? It's
always the women, always the women. She's now my wife.
Oh,
so
amazing.
It's a good ending to that story.
Yeah.
But I moved to London, needed a job. Did the typical, working in bars, working in temp jobs in media, and then I saw this ad for events. Went for it. Had no clue about events or about the B2B business world, and managed to get the role. Initially, I was working on different industries. So, working in energy, working in life sciences. I did an event that was just focused purely on e-readers.
Wow.
This is me showing my age as well now. This was 14 years ago. And then, after a couple of years working across industry, I was given the opportunity by a friend of mine to come into the transport team. And, I knew very little of planes and trains apart from, using them.
Yeah.
I went into work on the World Aviation Festival, which was at that time called the World Low Cost Airlines Congress. So
Very interesting. I didn't know that.
you didn't know that?
No.
So we started out as the LCC Congress down at the Sofitel in Heathrow.
Okay, yeah.
You may know that one.
Yes, yeah. Very local.
Very local to you. And it was essentially, Michael O'Leary, Tony Fernandez, Bjorn Kos, the former CEO of Norwegian, these kind of big titans of the low-cost model, sat in the basement hotel in Heathrow, shouting at each other for 2 days, essentially.
And they're all personalities as well, right?
Big personalities, yeah. I mean, for me at that age, meeting some of these CEOs, it was pretty intimidating, and that was a big learning curve, learning how to manage with these personalities.
Yeah.
But yeah, I fell into aviation, and now I love the industry. I still wouldn't call myself a full aviation geek. I'd say I'm an aviation geek. It's about perspective, right?
Okay.
To my wife, I'm an aviation geek because, when I get on a plane and I say, okay, these seats are Recaro, she then...
Yeah. Okay, you're a geek.
You're a geek.
You're an aviation geek, yeah.
But to folks maybe like yourself and others, they... I'm probably, somewhere in the middle.
Oh, no. But there's a really key and important point there that you mentioned is the sort of exposure to different experiences. So before you got into the, you challenged yourself by going into events, but before that you sort of bounced around finding your own. And we've heard that quite commonly on the podcast. Like, on paper, through our education system, you're probably taught it's very... one after the other, you'll do your degree, you'll find a job, you'll do this, and you'll go into your career. Like, very rarely do you end up in the same career that you do your degree in, like, biomedical scientist sitting here. So how I ended up in aviation is a different story. So doesn't quite work.
This is what we need to hear about, Raza.
I'm not biomedical science. I wouldn't. For those doing it, by all means do it. But it wasn't for me. But yes, there's just a diversity of the experiences that you have. Were there certain experiences that you went through or sort of jobs that you did that thought actually gave me really good skills for the future? And they could be anything. Like, I mean, I've had a number of people that worked at, bars and clubs. It was just the human interaction that was at. I learned how to communicate and read people. But was there something similar for you?
Yeah, I think, I've worked in bars, I've managed bars, and to be honest, being on the front line with people who are inebriated is the ultimate. You see it with cabin crew. It's amazing what they do day in, day out. They have to deal with, it's quite intense. There are a lot of people who are having too much of a good time occasionally on board, and they're stuck there. At least with a bar, people leave. You have security. So I really respect what those guys do, and I think those skills have stuck with me my whole life. I've done customer service roles. Straight out of uni, you need a job.
Yeah.
What's there to do? Working, with Sky TV, for example, in customer service. Sat there for 12 hours with a headset on, handling all sorts of calls, cancellations, complaints. And I think, that gives you a bit of a thicker skin,
Yeah.
and a bit more. And also, it gave me a good perspective on what I wanted to do. You often you do the jobs you don't want to do at the beginning of your career to figure out what you actually want to do and what you're passionate about. And with events, I found something that I didn't know I was looking for, and I fell into it, and I love it. I'm very passionate about events now, and I'm very passionate about my products and what I put out there, and what the team does. So it's really, it's given me perspective on, what you can do. I feel very lucky in what I do, because I've done those jobs before, and I always empathize, especially on board a plane.
Oh, that's amazing. No, I mean, again, that's it. It's just a discovery of finding your passion, and that will only go through life experiences. You'll never have it written. Very rarely would you have it from 5 years old. I know I'm going to be this, and that's what you end up, and you're becoming that and becoming happy in it. You need the exposure. So that's something I definitely recommend to anyone watching, young, old. Expose yourself to so many different interactions, experiences, and you never know what will happen.
Yeah.
And an opportunity and a door will open, and that will be maybe your calling as such. But
Yeah.
that's that's a brilliant clip there, right there, and remember that one, the life advice. But yeah, so you joined the events company, and it was focused on LCCs, and a lot of people will ask, okay, one thing we do on the podcast is just slightly peel back the layer and stuff. Like you were mentioning Michael O'Leary, you've had Tony Fernandez and stuff. Is it as simple as an email? Or is there a way to build that? How do you go about attracting that level of audience and presenting presenters as such, especially at that time and the age that you were at and the infancy in the industry? How do you sort of have the confidence to do that, or is it coming because you're a part of a brand? How does that work?
Well, I think initially it was very daunting. I'd just come into the industry. My boss, she knew a little bit about aviation, but she was overseeing, the whole of transport. So, we had very good relationships with people like Alex Cruz, for example, who was at Vueling at the time. So, the initial ask was, okay, let's set up a call with Alex Cruz. I was a week into the job, and she put me on the phone with the guy who wrote the LCC Bible.
Yeah.
Essentially. So, at that time, I had my script, my sheet, the questions to ask him. And, my boss had helped me out preparing for this call because it was a big deal. And, the call was going fine. We were having a good chat. He was giving me an update on the industry, some of the trends, some of the areas of focus for the event. I was like, this is great. We've got the whole agenda here. Thanks so much, Alex. And then the last question my boss had put down was, ask him about Africa.
Oh my God.
So, I'm here trying to impress Alex Cruz, and hopefully my questions are interesting for him to answer. And then the final question, I go, so Alex, what about Africa? What's happening in that region?
Really testing your knowledge.
Really testing, yeah. He just said to me, I don't know about that region. That's not an area of focus for me. But it was one of those things where you feel, we had a great call, and I've just made myself look so idiotic. But it put me in good stead for future calls with CEOs or C-levels. I wasn't afraid to ask those questions. You get more comfortable making yourself almost look or feel stupid, in a way. But what set me up quite well for that is, before, the role I had in events before was it was delegate sales, which is essentially you're calling people up to sell tickets.
Yeah.
Of course, we don't do this at Terrapin anymore. Some events companies do it. We do it just through email marketing, socials, all that kind of stuff. So it's more automated. But at the time, we had a team of 20 to 25 people calling around and selling, tickets for events, essentially.
Yeah.
So my role was, making 80 to 100 dials a day, an hour and a half, 2 hours on the phone, calling around. And that, initially was very daunting, but it gave me a lack of fear in a sense of when I came to the role for the Low Cost Airlines Congress, I wasn't afraid to direct dial a C-level from an airline.
That's,
And
First
have
of all,
that
how'd you
chat.
get the number is the second thing. The second thing is, quite daunting. Yeah.
Yeah. So I was lucky in fact, in a sense that I inherited a lot of the relationships from the previous director. So we had the contacts, but I don't think we had anybody, directly called. Almost, people were shocked in a sense that they were being directly called, and I said, almost setting it up for the research call. So yeah, we had that. I had those skills from the previous role that I was able to apply to the what we call production role, and yeah, it went really well. And obviously, the initial event, you asked me a question around how do I get these CEOs. So we had the relationships. That was something that we'd had in position, but we didn't have the likes of Michael O'Leary. He hadn't attended the event previously. Now, with Michael O'Leary, you're never going to go to Michael O'Leary directly. I don't have his mobile number. I don't have him on WhatsApp, if only. But, you go through the communications guys, you go through the PR guys, you obviously build up the value of why you think it would be useful for them to be at your event. But to be honest with Michael, uniquely with him, I honestly think he only accepted it because I had an Irish surname. That's honest to God reason. Because he, the producer before me had invited him for the last 5 years, always said no. Maybe he saw the Boyle.
Oh, that's it. One of my own.
Why not? Yeah. But most CEOs, there's a degree of, getting out to other events where they are, and meeting them face to face, because, if you're just, they must get 50 invites a day. Their schedules are often built in 12 months in advance.
Yeah.
So, if you get out there, you meet them, you shake their hand, you have a brief conversation, and then, they recognize your name on the invite, on the email, then it's more likely to happen.
Yeah, I mean, it's advice for me now, because with this, when we grow this platform, we want C-level on here, and hopefully we'll talk about how we can do that in the future. But one recent interaction we had where I've asked the CEO, why did you come onto this podcast? And that's to come. Wait for that news. But he was like, the genuineness of our conversation that we had wherever we had it, at the conference or anything like that, is what gave me intrigue. A lot of people are selling me stuff and it's not genuine. Yours was just a genuine conversation about aviation. I'm passionate about it, you're passionate about it, and we hit it off like that.
Yeah.
And it's just that. And they're not scary, horrible people. They're just inundated with so much, so busy, probably, all sorts going on in the background. But if you can just ignite their passion just through true enthusiasm, rather than a want for getting something from them, the rest will come later. That will come. They are, at the end of the day, they are people, genuine people that just want to have a conversation, maybe away from aviation, or a generalist conversation, or how to grow it, or see another unique idea. They don't want to be pitched, sold, or anything like that. Yeah. So definitely, I think just having genuine conversation,
totally agree,
is the trick.
Yeah, for sure.
Brilliant. So that's now you've developed your relationships with the C-level, with the low cost. This is around 2013, 2014, around this time.
This was 2013 was the first event that I did with low cost. So we ran the event. We had a great show. I remember it very vividly because it was obviously my first conference that I'd run. When you without doing it, it's difficult to explain the emotions you go through of bringing together, obviously a couple of hundred people at that time, but going towards thousands now. and the different cogs, you have to sort of manage. But I remember the first event, the thing that sticks in my mind was the interaction with Mr. O'Leary himself. He, I remember thinking, is he going to show up the night before? The panic. You've got your keynote lined up. We had Michael O'Leary, we had Willie Walsh,
Yeah.
we had Bjorn Koss. Oh no, actually, sorry, I tell a lie. We had Bjorn. We had the CFO of Norwegian. Bjorn couldn't make it, and we had Peter Elbers, who was the CEO of KLM at the time. So not a bad keynote to start with.
Yeah.
And I remember that night, asking my team, "Has anyone seen Michael? Where is he?
Heard from him.
Have you heard from him?" And one of the guys actually said, "Oh yeah, I saw him. I saw him at the restaurant. I think he was sat with another CEO maybe." And it turns out that it was him and Willie Walsh having dinner together.
The two best of friends.
Yeah,
Oh.
yeah. So that's my two keynotes. I know they're in the building. I know they're there, but we're in the airport, so they've got ways to escape.
Yeah, I was going to say, as a location, it works great. But then I was like, oh, for an LCC, Heathrow doesn't really work great.
Yeah. It's risky. It's risky. But the next morning, I'm always around the registration desk, or if you're an event producer, you're always around the registration desk because you want to get all your ducks in a row, essentially, for the opening keynote.
Mm-hmm.
And 3 of them were there, but there's no Michael. Where's Michael? We've got 5 minutes to go before the keynote, and I have to make an opening speech for the first time in front of 200-300 people. Never done that before. But all I'm thinking about is where is Mr. O'Leary? and then all of a sudden he appears out of nowhere, and I'm thinking, great, he's there. But what happens with O'Leary? What happens with other CEOs? I'm sure you've seen it with your CEO. Instantly as they appear at an event, they get swarmed.
Yeah.
The press, they want to get their quote. The vendors, they want to do their pitch. Other airlines, other CEOs want to speak to them. So instantly, I think it was a guy from possibly from the Times, comes over to Michael O'Leary. It's very old-fashioned news guy, and he's got his pen and paper, and he's straight away onto Mr. O'Leary. Okay, I need to ask you about this, and I swear to God, I've never seen this since. But Michael O'Leary pulls out 5 or 6 newspaper clippings. So he's got them there prepared. This guy must have written.
Oh, wow. He's done his homework.
He's done his homework, and he goes through it line by line. Okay, that's wrong. That's wrong. That's wrong. and the journalist was
red-faced,
completely devastated. Yeah. And then I'm just trying to get his attention because I need him on stage in 60 seconds. And he without fail turns around to me. He goes, "Hi Daniel, great to meet you. How are you?" Big smile on his face. I'm like, "Great, Michael, but we need to go. We need to go." So take him through, get him seated in the front row, and then that's my cue to do my opening speech, which I'd never done before in front of.
That's a challenge in itself,
Very daunting. I still public speaking is still, I find that very difficult. It doesn't come natural to me.
So this is it, right? And loads of people say to me, like, even take this for example, how do you prepare and stuff like that? After you go through the cycle 1 or 2 times,
Mm-hmm.
you get used to it. Okay, there isn't 250 people watching. Maybe that changes everything here. But you get that every time. You get that something in your stomach.
Yeah.
But the first 2 sentences usually come out and then it flows.
Yeah.
Some people need enormous amount of prep. Others, probably Michael right now saying there is I can confidently just have the chat.
Yeah.
It's an art form. It's a skill. You see it. I'm not saying I'm great at it or anything like that, but I can't rehearse. I find it awkward to rehearse. I find it more awkward rehearsing than I would actually presenting. But for other people, it's the other way around. It's a really unique skill. It's I absolutely hats off to anyone that's able to just jump on in front of 500 people and just speak without, having to go through so much information or anything like that.
I think it's repetition. The more you do it, the better you are at
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
And
Absolutely.
I've probably done about 60 or so events since then, so hopefully I'm a little bit better these days.
But it's a changing topic for you. Sometimes it's airline, one times it's train. Like,
Yeah,
you can't. You're not saying the same thing. You may have a similar structure, but the topic, and to sort of introduce an event, you're going to have to give a brief overview of something, and sound like a bit of an expert. So
Yeah.
that takes the homework to do. And industry trends change relatively quite quickly. News from yesterday might be today to adjust your speech or anything like that.
Yeah, I think the speech is always the night before for me.
Yeah.
That's always, because you're right, current events can happen and it completely changes. So it's something that I still feel uncomfortable with it, but I want to get better at it year on year, when I do that speech, because it's gone from 200, 300 people to thousands of people, and it is less daunting, to be honest, than it was, when I was a bright-eyed 25-year-old
Yeah.
in front of 300 people. But it's something that I think you just need to keep doing it, and this is what I tell my nieces, my nephews, it's you just keep practice.
So this is another thing that we come to and we commonly discuss, and I raise, and I get some feedback back of, oh, you're so old and looking at this. I'm like, but with the next generation of people, I grew up in a phase of just where email was coming in, text was coming in. I never wrote handwritten letters to anyone, so I'm okay in that front. But this technological age where everyone's writing messages on WhatsApp, Teams, things like that, them transitioning to do that, it may be a bigger shocker for them because they're behind a screen and that's what they're used to. When they have to project outwards, it's a bigger challenge. There's a lot more to overcome. Do you feel like the communication skill aspect, maybe people you work with or you're seeing next generation leaders and stuff, there's a change in how they would communicate conventionally, what you've seen in the past, a lot more preparation? How do you see any trend in that or any changes in that?
It's an interesting question because I think a lot of this has changed since 2020.
Yeah.
And we've gone through obviously a time where we've similar to the airline industry, where we've had a big transformation, especially in terms of the look and feel of the company, the culture, the teams. I've got a lot of 23, 24-year-olds in my team now. So the age has gone down since COVID. And, they're great. I love having them in the team because they almost challenge me, to think differently.
That youthful exuberance, not knowing the boundaries and all that sort of stuff, breaking those.
Yeah, exactly. And the boundaries have changed in a way. The way you have those discussions, it's changed, and the openness, I think, of this next generation is refreshing. And they will, if they are uncertain about something, they will tell me. And I think, coming from maybe the millennial generation, the generation before that, we internalized a lot of this stuff. And I do worry about what you're talking about in terms of, relying on Teams, WhatsApp, and communicating through text. It's something I'm conscious of. I'm sure you are as well.
Yeah.
If my daily use on my phone goes over 3 hours, I worry about that. And I worry about the guys at work when you'll see people getting distracted. It's very difficult for people to take their phone off their desk now. But in terms of getting out there, communicating, public speaking, I think inherently we have to hire people that are gregarious, in events, because you're the face of that event. You have to get out there. You can't hide from it. You can't escape it. The public speaking side of it, we have training, we have support in that sense, but it's very personal to the individual. You have some people who will just do it; they don't care, they're not concerned. You have others that will worry about just that one moment for weeks before the event, And
Worry themselves sick, yeah.
yeah, and you know, you have to manage each person differently, and understand what kind of support they need as opposed to the other person. And I think that's how I was managed, and that's how I think you know, that's what I've taken on board from some of the mentors I've had. My previous boss, she was she loved giving the speech, and she, you know, she pushed me into doing that. She put me out of in my discomfortable zone, you know, my uncomfortable zone, um, and I appreciate that she did that because she knew that I would have to do this year on year, and you know, what better way to learn? And I think, you know, I don't want to put people, I don't want to make people uncomfortable.
Yeah, yeah. There's a
but
balance.
there is a balance, yeah. And you know, if somebody's really anxious and really unsure, I'll say no problem. You know, I'll do the speech this time. You take it next time. You know.
Yeah.
But yeah, we have a great team, and I'm very happy with the hires we've made, and how we've, since COVID, we've obviously, the look and feel of the team is very different. I'm one of the, well, I am the eldest now in the team.
Pretty young team then, huh? No.
Well, you see the greys, you probably can see them better on the HD cameras. So yeah, I'm very happy with the team and what we've achieved since coming out of the pandemic.
I mean, like, we'll get to the point of what happened during the pandemic, because if the world stops, doesn't mean events don't stop. They do. How do you get that? I want to talk about that sort of resilience side, things that you would have gone through emotionally, physically, all that sort of stuff. But the bit of feedback I have for you, I've sat in the audience 5-6 times at these events. Opening speech flawless. I don't think you have anything to worry about there.
Thank
The
you.
event's sharp. I haven't ever seen an issue. There was one incident we'll talk about. That was a protest that occurred, but that would just be asked how do you sort of deal with that. But coming back to where we were of building up this conference now, like, it's an audience of 250 people. It was focused around LCCs. What came to you to make the pivot, to make it wider, to put the breadth out of maybe we should make a whole industry event, maybe go to 500, 1,000? What drives that? Is it an industry trend that drives that? Is it demand from the airlines to participate, or was it yourselves taking the initiative and then marketing it? Because you can be reactive to the demand, or you can sort of be proactive to generate the demand, and then there's two sort of skill sets that I want to push on.
Yeah, for sure. So, you know, I've done, you know, extensive research, or at this point in 2013, I would have done extensive research purely with low-cost carriers.
Yeah.
And at that time, let's say customer experience was not at the top of the agenda. But, you know, the low-cost event was great, but it did pigeonhole us. And we were a niche of a niche in that sense. You know, we were very much in that position where, you know, this is as far as this event can go if we continue to focus on just on low-cost carriers. So we decided that we wanted to expand it. We wanted to include hybrid carriers, full service carriers, or legacy carriers, whatever you want to call them. We wanted to make it more global. It was, at the time, I think it was very European.
Yeah.
We had Southwest there a couple of times. Herb Kelleher, the legend, that is. But yeah, the decision to expand and scale was purely on the fact that we're only serving a small part of the industry. We wanted to serve the entire industry, but we wanted to do it from the perspective of, you know, what are the current trends? Where's a growing focus for full service legacy carriers? And what we found from just speaking to them, you know, part of my role is, you know, what I say is I'm never happy if I haven't had a call or research call with an airline or an airport or a government official, at least one a day, you know, just to gauge what's going on and understand your industry. And I think it's incredibly important when you go into events and you are in one industry. You need to understand the pain points. You need to understand the dynamics. You need to understand, who are the top 10, top 15 speakers you need to have for that event, for that industry. And what we did was we went out and we actually went to other events. So we went to a ton of events focused on retailing, for example, customer experience, loyalty.
Yeah.
And we saw all of these these silos. And Razi, you work in this industry. Those silos, of course, still exist.
Yeah. They exist in organizations.
Yeah.
And it's not for the want of trying or breaking it. They just naturally end up forming into departments, organizations. That's how organizations are also set up.
Yeah. So we essentially we said, okay, well, there are these silos, but we need to bring them all together. And we want to expand this event. We want more people to come. So let's focus in on customer experience, as an example. So the first year, we added a customer experience track, and we had people for the first time from full service carriers, which was very difficult to do at the time because the event was such a LCC community, and the full service community at that time, they might come and sit in the audience and want to learn and see what the LCCs are doing, just purely because of the convergence of the business models. But they would not necessarily want to be on stage.
So do you think was there another industry event? That was the other question I have, that was covering their needs, that was going on at the same time, that was similar to you but focused on them? Was there anything for them then?
There were a few events out there. There were a few association events and a few others, but quite small, very niche. They didn't have the scale. So what we wanted to do was essentially, and I hate this term, but it sums it up quite well, is be a one-stop shop.
Yeah.
For everything that's related to customer experience, the commercial side, because they're all interlinked.
Yeah. They all have an impact on each other.
Yeah.
And look, we can talk. There's a brief section here where we talk about key trends and things like that. There will be trends that will affect operation to customer. Those are inherently linked, and whatever the customer's willing to pay for that operation is going to be recouped through commercials, right?
Yeah.
That's how it frankly quite works.
Yeah, exactly. And that's something that we'd identified, but because the airlines were set up in such a siloed way, we were like, okay, let's add in customer experience. Year one, we'll see how it goes. So we added in customer experience. I think in the first year we had airlines like British Airways. We had KLM. We had some of the big US carriers come over, so United, Delta, Qantas, and it really added an extra little flavor that year. Year two, we said, okay, there's this new thing called apps.
Yeah, mobile apps.
Mobile apps.
Brand new thing.
Brand new thing. At the time, it was very early days for mobile apps, and airlines were starting to tinker around with apps and digital tools and technology. So we added a digital track, which was really looking at it from both sides, front of house, behind the scenes, how the journey's interconnected, how you can utilize technology to deliver a seamless experience, as we like to say. And then year on year we added more and more and more, and we added a few hundred people every year, pretty much, because we were adding in these customer experience tracks, the digital, the loyalty, the retail, and it added an extra flavor and built upon that. We stayed in, we were in London.
Yeah.
Obviously, we started at the Sofitel. We said, okay, we're going to go a little bit bigger next year. So we booked out a larger venue, and then the following year we said, okay, it's really, we're seeing a decent, 20-30% growth year on year with the number of attendees. Shall we go to the Business Design Centre, which is in Islington, which is
I remember that. Yeah,
lovely venue. I think it's great open space, and we at the time that was quite intimidating for us because we had only been at the Sofitel.
Yeah.
So we went into the Business Design Centre, and then I think we had a residency there for 5-6 years, maybe. Actually, we filled out this venue now. Where do we go from here? And the Excel,
Yeah, I remember that definitely.
yeah,
That was
that was the COVID year.
yeah, that was definitely that was an interesting one. Yeah,
That was an interesting. We'll get more into that
yeah. So
later. So yeah, it's gone on from, like you say, from 200 people up to, this year we're going to have over 5,000
wow.
attendees, and it's been my baby that I've seen grow, and now it's getting to, I think we're probably just around young adulthood.
So this is another thing, right? A lot of so you've got that sense of achievement that you've been unknowingly and then knowingly building something with a strategic lens to build from where you were when you joined to now running this and then growing it. And now you give that opening speech this year, looking out at potentially 5,000 people. Do you recall that? Does that always stay in the back of your mind, etched the 200 people Sofitel small stage, and then you're now in front of 5,000? And do you have the chance to step back and say, look what I've achieved? Do you get to celebrate that?
I think more in my later years. I would say later years. Around the last few years, I think everyone's become a bit more circumspect since 2020, right? I think that has probably given us all a bit of perspective, and what happened there, was a big hit to us, to the events industry, to the aviation industry, and I think it gave us time to think and realize what we appreciate, and I'm I'm a bit more contemplative these days than I used to be. I think when I was doing the event in those early days, I was just doing it, ticking the boxes, moving on to the next one. Now I do look back to 2013, the early days, and think, wow, this is obviously this has grown into something serious, and I really appreciate the industry has come with us on this journey, because it is tough to grow and develop into what we call a festival now, and I think that's I appreciate what you've attended over the years, and I appreciate you as giving us that feedback, and seeing the growth. And a lot of people have come on that journey. We've got people who were there in 2013. They were there before me when the event started.
Yeah.
And those are the guys and girls that I would go to as for feedback, and they're always going to be the harshest critics because they know what it was before. And I think when you're used to something a certain way, those are the people that you want to convince, and those are the people that you want to take on that so-called journey with you, because if you can take them on board and convince them, then the rest will be easy.
Yeah, no, by all means. I mean, I've seen it. I saw it in the Business Design Center very early on. It was local. It was great. So all fantastic. And then it started getting a bit more global, which we'll come to. So yeah, no, I've seen it radically grow. And now I'm having colleagues that when I joined, I was junior, and I would go to these events, daunting, not an extrovert by any means. I'm on camera, but no means. This has taken some building to get to. I'd go to these events. I'd look at these suppliers, vendors, everyone's sort of wanting to talk with you, and I'm like, I don't know if I'm able to talk to you, first of all. Then you get comfortable, and then you realize, and then just having good conversation with another industry peer on something logical. How do you see that? You all face the same problems we do. Yeah. God, okay, it's not as, and now my frustration can go, it's an industry problem, it's not an airline problem. Well, how can we solve it? Maybe we should speak to IATA. Maybe we should speak on, get someone to speak on stage. All that sort of stuff comes as feedback, comes as an area, which I love. That's the best part about this and the events that you put together is the diversity of people. I mean, I've made great friends in the likes that are in Dubai, in Emirates, Riyadh Air, seeing those and their growth. It's just amazing to be able to appreciate the industry in from just a different, unique lens. I see it from a European lens, but the American lens is so fascinating because it's so different. Yeah. The Asian lens and what business looks like in Singapore and Hong Kong is fascinating because the customer is completely different there. Yeah. And whereas you have your hat on thinking it's just generic, it's not. And it's amazing to see. And then you get to take that back to your insights team, and you tell your company that it's not. This is how things work here. And then everyone's knowledge grows.
Yeah.
So that is it's a short, sharp burst of information that we're able to take in and build those insights from. So I think hats off for that. But we touched on something.
Mm-hmm.
The time where the world stopped. So you are ramping up quite radically. These events are growing. No one's foreseeing what's about to come.
Yeah.
Typically, if I remember, your events were held during probably after the summer, September time, October time. So we're getting to May 2020. March, April is where the world comes to a stop.
Yeah.
I'm imagining as an event company, you have stuff booked, paid for, reserved, anything like that, plans for people. You get that phone call that, yes, we're going into lockdown. Talk me through what happens when you're organizing an event of a large scale and having to react to that.
Yeah, so I mean, the initial reaction is just sheer panic.
Yeah, could only imagine.
Yeah, we had 5 events planned throughout the year. One of them was running, or was due to run, the week after lockdown was announced.
Oh, wow.
So we were in a meeting one day saying, okay, yeah, we're going to run this. It's going to happen. We're just going to have to take these precautions. The meeting the next day, it was a very different tone. This event cannot happen. Oh, and by the way, one of the Spanish guys, he needs to go fly out to Spain today because they're locking down Spain.
Oh my God.
Yeah. So it was very much initial panic, and then you start to think, okay, what can we do here? We've got a physical event, we've got a community around that event. What does the industry need right now? And what is the industry not getting right now? And the industry needed information, needed updates, wasn't getting it. There wasn't a knee-jerk reaction from, I think, a lot of the other organizers. I think, Terrapin we have a kind of a startup mentality, so we can move quite quickly and be quite agile in that sense. And my boss, he just said to me, let's do some webinars. Let's start with some webinars. I'd done one webinar in my life by that point. I think since I've probably done about 50. But the initial mandate was, okay, let's do some webinars. And I was thinking, okay, we've got industry experts. People need an update. So let's get together all of our industry experts and we'll do a global blow by blow. What's happening in Europe? What's happening in America? What's happening in Asia?
Yeah.
Because, I think, you can read the news, of course, but just to get an overview specifically in the industry at that time was very difficult. And the folks we work with, the consultants who've been around for years and years, they understand, they have the contacts, they've got real-time information. And we thought, well, let's get them all together. And we did the first webinar. It was very clunky. It was
going on mute, coming off mute, all that sort of stuff.
Yeah. There was all that, the connection issues and everything. But we brought together, I think the first one maybe about 1,000 people.
Wow.
On the first webinar, and
because the struggle is many countries had mechanisms where people were allowed off work temporarily or weren't covering.
Mm-hmm.
Some people were ramping down days wise, or there was various different mechanisms, right? So you'd go to a £1,000 people organization to a couple of hundred to just focus on certain things because you're not flying.
Yeah.
How are you finding them? I assume most of the people that you're doing to was quite senior and probably still around building out the company.
Well, it was a difficult time because you're right, we didn't know necessarily who was still around. A lot of people on furlough at the time as well. And we had to build our audience and build our community again, in a way, because we'd lost a lot of people, unfortunately.
Yeah, had left, or redundancies, all sorts, furlough, may not come back, another roles, all sorts.
It was a complete reset. And this is where our social channels came in. You know, I hadn't really used LinkedIn up to this point, and LinkedIn all of a sudden became essential to, you know, to promote the event and promote the webinars and what we were doing. So yeah, we ran some webinars. We started to partner with folks we hadn't partnered with before. It was, you know, that was what was nice to see, actually, the collaboration with, you know, people like CETA, IATA. You know, we were running webinars on the travel pass and all this kind of stuff. That became very important at one point. We were running webinars talking about the airflow in the cabin and all this kind of, you know, stuff that was very
HEPA filters. I remember
yes,
that was it.
Yes.
That was HEPA filters and how important a filter in the cabin that's been there for a number of years that no one's cared about up until this point.
HEPA filters became very important.
Number one, yeah. I remember that.
So we were talking about all these things that were not necessarily directly relevant to the World Aviation Festival, but the industry just needed some information, needed to be updated, and it needed to ask questions.
Yeah.
So I think the you know, the questions with every webinar we had at least 20, 30 questions, and we just didn't have time to answer them. So we built upon that. We had these mini webinars. We continued to grow the community and service the community, and then we decided to do an event, you know, the World Aviation Festival online, which was, you know, the first time we'd attempted to do the World Aviation Festival online, which was quite daunting. But it was I'll be honest, it was clunky.
Yeah.
It wasn't anything like the physical version. But again, you know, the people that attended were relatively happy because they didn't have any other option.
They had no other mechanism. Yeah. I don't remember attending that one. I don't know if I did. I was still working. Maybe I think I did because it's really hard to sit on a whole day thing, right? So I think it was short, sharp bursts of dropping in and out.
That's the thing. The first one I think we did over 2 days, and we found that, you know, people enjoyed it, but they, you know, you don't attend a virtual event the way you attend a physical event. You're not in a fixed location. So the next time we ran a virtual event, we did kind of these short, snappy interviews and panels that you could watch. I think it was one a day that you could watch, and that went down really well because we had CEOs that we'd never actually had before as well, because they, you know, they were available.
Yeah, they had the time.
People like Scott Kirby, you know, who had never physically come to the World Aviation Festival, but it was a really good way to meet him and for him to be a part of our community and share the news, what they were up to at the time. So yeah, it really helped us expand in a strange way. The pandemic did help us grow that community.
Well, I mean, it's hard to say it's a blessing in disguise, but sometimes it gives you an opportunity to pivot and realize there's other mechanisms of communicating, doing things, and maybe we weren't harnessing this, and then that sticks. Your LinkedIn, for example. Yeah, I think that's a fantastic sort of mechanism to communicate and give the sort of professional edge on the social side and giving that and building people's profiles and stuff like that. And I'm really big on that now. And this is one reason I created the platform is there are some great people out there, great stories that just need to be told. Yeah. And it needs a location or an intimate conversation to draw that out, to build that attractiveness so they can build their personal brand. Everyone should have a personal brand in the modern world and build that out, coupled with their corporate brand as such. But I think a lot of people started realizing the power of video, the power of short form content. That really took off from the pandemic. But sort of the events that you had planned, that you had to then cancel. Yeah. Were those industries that own those conference centers and stuff receptive to understanding that, okay, because the Excel was turned into a hospital, right?
It was the Excel. Part of the Excel was a morgue.
Yeah,
quite. Yeah, you know,
the
quite
army
morbid
building.
To think about it now, but yeah, it was partly a morgue, and you know that was put things in perspective. Let's say, you know, the venues were great, to be honest. We were all in the thick of it at the time. Yeah, I think, you know, it's the same with the airlines, and you know, you probably see more collaboration.
Well, camaraderie came around that we're all in this, and the whole around cleaning the HEPA filters, all that knowledge was shared throughout the industry. It wasn't just kept within an airline or anything like that. Everyone said, "This is what we're doing. Go and do the same if you need to." There were loads of information content of how you're going to bring people on board, rescue flights, all this sort of stuff. Yeah. There were a number of occasions. I mean, on the last podcast with Ben Zehovic, they talk about a rescue mission to Morocco to take out Americans who were about to go into martial law over there.
Oh, wow.
And how BA flew 7 planes back to Morocco to take them out and bring them to London so they can go to the US.
Yeah, amazing.
But it was just unheard of collaboration that happens in minutes.
Yeah.
That would take years to sort of dream up this stuff before. Yeah. But okay, so then the interesting one is then post pandemic, just 1 or 2 years after your first physical event.
Yeah.
Rules were changing. Masks, no mask, distance, no distance. How do you make the call of if you're going ahead with this or not? Just because of the sheer headache it could cause and the fear of people, do I really want to go to an event with 1,000 people around? Is it dangerous? How do you get over that? How did you advertise? How did you get the buy-in for that? Both internally and then your industry peers. You
have to first of all pick a date.
Yeah.
This was usually around 12 months beforehand. Now we have a 15-month cycle, so we know 15 months out where the following year we are going to be, what date exactly it's going to be, because the size and scale of the event are so large that we have to book out a space.
Yeah, you're competing against football. You're competing against
Grand Prix.
Yeah.
All these sporting events, all these other exhibitions, trade shows. We're in that ballpark now. So before it was a little bit easier.
It feels good to say, yeah.
It does. And yeah, we had to pick a venue, a date, 12 months in advance for the 2021 event. And this was at a time before we even had a vaccine. So we were all, the vaccine was unknown at the time, and the efficacy of it was unknown at the time. So it was very early days, and we picked a date. I think it was around November time. That because a lot of the other events, you think about it, we're just doing the same thing as us, right? So everyone's trying to get their dates either probably pushed as late as possible in 2021. And what actually happened was that we ran a couple of events, not the World Aviation Festival, we ran a couple of other events in October pretty smoothly, because they were just before, I think, that next wave was coming in, or just around the middle of that wave. And then what ended up happening was that the week before our event, I remember this very vividly, actually, sitting on the sofa with my wife, feeling very stressed anyway about the event because we hadn't run an event for a long time.
Yeah, out of practice, a bit rusty. You have to pick up the pieces on all sorts, right?
Exactly.
And the world's slightly different now.
Exactly. And having that anxiety around, the next wave and, the lockdowns and all that kind of stuff came back. And so we sat down on the sofa, me and the wife, and we're watching TV, and our lovely former Prime Minister, Mr. Boris Johnson, God bless him, came on television and announced that anybody that arrives into the UK will need to take a test on arrival, and they will need to isolate until the test deems that they are COVID-free. So, and this was actually 3 days before the event. So, I initially obviously started panicking. What are we going to do? This is
the logistics behind it, because I remember this now.
Yeah.
It's coming back.
Yeah.
I remember this. Unaffected, but yes, a number of counterparts who were,
We've got people flying in from around the world. We've got exhibitors.
It just happened days before the event, or a week or so before the event.
It was actually 3 days before the event.
It was, yes.
It was
days before, I remember now.
So this is probably the worst week professionally of my life, and it begins with that speech from Boris Johnson.
Oh, wow.
So what do? We get together the team and try and figure out solutions for this, because you've got 1,000 emails in your inbox, you've got people on WhatsApp, text message, calls coming in. You need to have an answer to those questions.
Yeah.
What are you going to do? We got on a call. I think it was 7 a.m. the next morning.
I was going to say, I don't think anyone was sleeping at this time.
There was no sleep was had for the whole week. No sleep was had, and we got on a call 7 a.m. and luckily, actually, there was another event running at the Excel at the time, which was an interiors show for cruise ships. They had the same issue as us.
Yes. Yeah.
And they had found a solution. They had found a company that could do the testing, rapid testing. You isolate in your hotel room.
2 hours or a couple of hours?
It was a couple of hours, yeah. Yeah, if that, actually. Most of the results came back within the hour, so it was pretty quick. So yeah, we managed to set this up rapidly, and we communicated that relatively effectively to everyone across. I think LinkedIn was the main channel. Obviously, emails were going out. I wish I had sort of an automated ChatGPT style response at the time, because my inbox was
full.
It was full, yeah. And I just remember, almost drowning in the inbox, and just trying to get through it. And then as soon as you got through the first lot, the next lot comes in. And we had to make the event a hybrid event, essentially overnight as well. So we hadn't planned to bring people in online. We hadn't planned at all to have any kind of hybridization of the event. By hybrid, I just mean it being broadcast externally and being there physically. We hadn't planned for that, so we had to completely switch, in 48 hours to a hybrid event. And I think it was on the Monday, I had 50 or 60 speakers cancel on me, which is unheard of in this. You may get one or two the day before, you may get one on the day due to some travel issues, but 50 or 60 in a day is a lot.
Brings you to your knees.
Yeah. So we had that. However, because we switched to hybrid, I could turn around and say to them, actually, we can do this online. Is that okay? So we had a good response quickly. So it was really that initial shock kicked in, but then as soon as we had a plan, as soon as we were able to get the team just responding to all of the questions, everybody was working flat out. I don't think we slept for that whole week. And yeah, the event happened. It wasn't the best World Aviation Festival, but it happened.
No, it did, yeah.
And the fact that it happened and we had a couple of thousand people there was astonishing to me. And I think people were surprised.
At the turnout, yeah. I remember I was there. I was there for the whole 3 days. Mask on. I think vaccination and everything had to be checked beforehand, or test had to be checked. Anyone I was trying to meet is, look, I don't know.
Yeah.
Because I've just arrived and I'm in a hotel room for 2 hours until I get tested.
Yeah.
Then I'll come out. 99% of people were perfectly fine. They came out. Probably got COVID after it. That's a different thing. But it felt what normal did at the time there.
Yeah.
It was really great. I don't think social distancing was too much of a thing, but naturally everyone was doing it.
Yeah.
For the time, it didn't feel alien. It didn't feel like the content was bad. There was still value delivered ultimately. And it was just good to see people back and traveling again.
Yeah.
And I can only imagine what happened 2 days before for what you see. And then that comes down to a trait that you probably have to look deep within yourself, of that resilience. Like as that butterfly, that pit in your stomach that doesn't disappear until you hear some relieving news. So my question is sort of, what got you through that that sort of moment.
Mm-hmm.
That initial 2-3 hours of that sinking in, everything's falling apart. If I don't do this, does the credibility go? There's so many things running in your head. What gets you through that? Is there something you do, something that's sort of personal to you that you just go hide in a corner? Do you just go to sleep? I don't know. How do you deal with something like that?
I think it's a combination of a few things. It's the team that you can lean on. I have a great team. I have people I've worked with for years and years, so we know each other very well, and we know when to push each other's buttons, and we know when to lean on each other's shoulders. And I think that was very important. That we had that. We were all in the same boat, and we could come together. We could respond quickly to our customers, and we could deliver something. I think the other point is around just moving forward. I always have this attitude of whatever you do, make sure that you're progressing, make sure you're moving forward. And with events, it can be like treading water. You're staying afloat sometimes. And I think that's always stuck with me. Just keep moving forward, move on to the next one, move on to the next one, and eventually you'll get there. So I think those, both the team and just that attitude of keep moving forward kept me going. There were times where I I did have to go into the back room and compose myself because it was a lot at the time. The event was running. If you think about it, we were running, I think, 10 tracks at the same time.
Yeah.
You've got people online not being able to connect, and everything's going through you. So there's just maybe 400 speakers. It's a lot live, in real time, and you want everything to run as smoothly as possible.
Yeah.
You have to accept that everything won't run as smoothly as possible. It's like the aviation industry, the only inevitable thing is that things will go wrong.
Yeah.
Essentially. But I think, just dealing with the hurdles, moving forward. I think that's my message. I would say to folks in the industry, to my team, to others, I'd say, whatever you're doing, it needs to progress the goal, essentially.
Brilliant. And look, I think it's a perfect way to sort of now move past that, get over those, breathe, and come to what I deem was probably the best industry event I've ever been to. I attended World Aviation Festival in Portugal.
Oh, yeah.
Last year, Lisbon.
Yeah, last year was Lisbon. Yeah.
The weather was amazing. The venue was amazing. The content, the lineup, and I think I've told you about this. That lineup that you had at the start of industry leaders, absolutely unreal.
Thank you.
How did you pull that off? We're talking Tim Clark, we have Luis Gallego, we have Willie Walsh, and so many more.
Yeah.
Even just straight after that session, having them on a panel who have such strong personalities, such strong brands, opposing opinions. How did you get that going? How do you manage that? That's what I want to know.
So first of all, thank you. I think I'm glad to hear you enjoyed last year's event. I think it was a great event. It was helped. Obviously, the sunshine always helps. The being in Lisbon, the vibe definitely helped. But yeah, I really appreciate you saying that because it's it takes a village.
Yeah, I can imagine. Yeah, because it was out of your comfort zone. I know you'd done other locations out, but this one is, things aren't the same as London over there.
Yeah.
Even logistically, transport wise, where you place it,
it's like almost like launching a new route.
Exactly.
You don't know until you know what's going to go wrong.
Yeah. But it was a fantastic turnout. Everyone walked away pretty happy. The event, the weather, everything was great. But I will not dive into how you pulled that one off. That one was really good.
Yeah, I think, to be honest, the pause of 2020, 2021 gave the team a little bit more almost passion to really try and not perfect the event, because it's never going to be perfect, but to really take it to that next level. And obviously we've built something here where we've got a good mix of C-levels. Then you've got your heads of different departments, and we really wanted to, because it was in Lisbon, it was a new city. We really wanted to give a great opener for that session, and likes of Sir Tim, who has been with the event for I think since 2015, 2016, having him back for the first time in a while. He didn't make Amsterdam the previous year because of a flight issue, but we won't get into that too much. Not naming any airlines that were at fault there. And yeah, I think so. Tim, just the relationship we have with him, he's somebody who brings something new to the table every time you speak to him. Even though he's been in the industry for such a long time, he will have a new idea. He will be following the trends. He will have something unique to say that sometimes, even the guys from his airline will be surprised because they'll be like, oh, actually, he's launching this message at World Aviation Festival. And we're very honored that he chooses our platform, our event, to do that. But yeah, so Tim is a great friend of the event. Willie Walsh, we've known him since the IAG days, and we work very closely with IATA now. In fact, I was in Chicago watching you on stage.
Oh yeah, that was fun.
So meeting, I think it's relationships. It's what you mentioned earlier about going to these events, meeting them face to face. With TAP, with Luis Rodriguez, we had a partnership, and we have a partnership actually exclusive for next year with TAP as we go back to Lisbon. And Luis, he was a new CEO at the time. I think it was one of his first events actually that he had attended. So we had a bit of a scoop there because they changed CEOs in between the event cycle. And obviously Luis Galejo, who I think it was the first time he was at the event. And that was just one of those things where we'd been inviting year on year, and finally the dates worked, the timing worked, and it all just came together. So a little bit of luck, a lot of relationships, and a lot of hard work from
Perseverance.
From the team.
Yeah,
perseverance. Yeah,
amazing.
Definitely.
No, I mean, it was everyone. I was sat in front row. It was amazing. But then there was one incident that happened, if you remember, because I had front row seats to it.
I remember. Yes. How
It
could I
was
forget?
yes. So I want to know what happens and where you were at the time, because you give the opening speech, then you hand it over to someone to hold the sessioning panel after the first intro. I'm sat down in row 2, right end seat, and I just hear this rustling behind me, and then someone step up with a banner, and it was some people making a protest about how aviation is having a negative impact on the environment, why we're here, why we've done that. First of all, being able to react like the Brench did, who just sort of invited their concerns and their protests as a question and turned around and said, so how do you address these guys' concern? Amazing reaction to be able to do that. You sort of own the incident while that's being dealt with. And everyone was like, well, just as they were saying, they don't get thrown off guard, everything like that. That was incredible. But where are you at this time, and what are you thinking is what I want to know.
So I was around in the audience at this time, and I was hearing chatter because as a team we have a WhatsApp group where everyone communicates, and I'm hearing chatter of a possible protest, and then I go into FBI, CIA mode, where I'm monitoring the crowd, looking for any suspects around. I have no idea what I'm looking for, but I'm scanning the room, trying to see if there's any threat around, making sure that the security are positioned, at the side of the stage, so they can, deter anyone from stepping onto the stage. So yeah, just obviously, worried about the session because like you say, it's a great session. It's going really well. Not so worried about the moderator because we have Guy Johnson, who's from Bloomberg, and he's
amazing. Yeah.
He's a pro. He deals with this kind of thing all the time. And then just coordinating the team and making sure that the protesters, they could have all, I'm happy for them to protest. Just making sure everyone's safe is incredibly important, because you don't know with a protest, what type of protest it's going to be. There are obviously sensitive issues you need to be aware of. So we have these, briefs with the local police, with the security team at the venue, weeks in advance. So we have if this happens, we need to do this. Much like an airline would if something goes wrong. It's irregular operations to a certain degree. Taking on board what happened last year, we've really, looked at the security for Amsterdam for this year and ensured that, for our CEOs, for our attendees, that it's a safe experience, that if there are going to be protests, they take place outside of the venue, and we allow people to their freedom of speech, of course, and that we embrace those topics. We embrace the controversy in a way where it's brought into the festival in the conversation, because you can't ignore some of the huge issues that there are out there.
No, it's definitely a topic that people are passionate about, and rightfully so. And that is a key trend. That is a key topic to have. And what are people doing? How are they going to do it? But sometimes the protesters also need to sort of realize that if planes stopped, a lot of what you receive, what your luxury goods are, potentially what you have, they don't arrive in the country that you're in. I sometimes play, there are families going to bereave loved ones. Yeah. If they don't have a plane to get to that location, they lose that moment. Yeah. To go celebrate a child's graduation, they don't have that moment. Yeah. So yes, there are issues and we need to resolve them, and the industry is doing its utmost to do that. Mm-hmm. And it's a cog. A lot of things have to connect to do that. While no one's shying away from the product, there is also a great factor it plays in growing GDP, human connection, tourism, all that sort of stuff as well. Yeah. So there's a fine balance of, careful what you wish for if you don't want planes to operate tomorrow. That will have other consequences, which we don't know. We don't know what we're about. But yes, there's definitely an issue that needs to be resolved. And no, I don't think anyone's shying away from that. Well, it was really good to hear that. And then obviously now, so coming towards the sort of end of this part or segment is that we spoke about how the growth of the event has happened, the sort of speed bump in the middle, and then the sort of regrowth and rebirth of that is, what now do you do to keep that going, Daniel? Like, how do you keep it fresh? How do you grow it even further? And especially in this modern, more digital age, what are the things that you're looking at to stay out in front, in top, to build that and build a great event going forward?
Yeah, it's a good question, because essentially your events year on year, so you're constantly trying to outdo yourself in a way, and it is difficult to keep things fresh when your event's been around for 20 odd years. That's why we rebranded 12 years ago. That's why we decided to add all of these new cogs and new tracks, and we continue to do that. So there's new things that we're adding this year. For example, our digital accessibility summit, which is a topic that we've wanted to talk about for years, to be honest. But we because of certain restrictions on rooms and hiring certain areas and all that kind of stuff, we just couldn't do it. Yeah. But we've done our research this year. We've really brought in a lot of folks from the likes of Gatwick, from Alaska Airlines, from around the world, to talk about how we can make travel more accessible and how we can overcome, the issues people have on a day-to-day basis when they have certain needs, whether visible or not. And I think that's an important one that we've added to the sessions this year, because it's been part of the customer experience discussion over the years, but we've not really singled it out. And I think it does need to have that focus, because it's these issues, we see our events as a way to kind of lobby in a way for these issues. If you're not highlighting them, if like sustainability, I guess is a good example. We've been talking about sustainability at this event for the last 6 years. However, it was very much initially a CEO discussion. It was part of the keynote. So 4 years ago, we said, okay, we need this sustainability track. We need it over 3 days, because there's so much to cover here.
Yeah, absolutely. So many pieces. But I love the accessibility track. I mean, it is it's a thing that I've been thinking about. I know that you have it's the ones that it's the disabilities and accessibilities that you can't see.
Yeah.
It is the ADHD, it is the autism and things like that. Because flying an aircraft and being a passenger on a metal device that's basically flying 35,000 feet, that should scare anyone that could. But for those people who struggle with change and is disruptive to their routine, the effect of sound, the effect of light, all that sort of stuff, lights on, lights off, going from daylight to darkness, not being able to sleep, tiredness, food, all that, that plays such a factor in someone's behavior that, how can you best give them the need that they don't have to feel that they're being disruptive or anything like that? How do you make them feel as comfortable as possible as well?
Yeah.
Because there's an art and psychology completely to that.
Yeah.
And people may say it's just a niche, and we'll have to adapt. That's our customer. That needs deep thinking, and I don't think we've done quite enough in that, to be honest.
Yeah, and I think that there are tools coming into play here. Obviously, everyone's got a phone in their pocket. There are digital tools that will have an impact on this. Whether it's you're blind, you're deaf, you're sort of neurodiversity comes into play.
Yeah.
There are a lot of interesting things happening in that space that are being driven by some of the large carriers now. I think highlighting it is so important. If you don't highlight something, it's not going to be that challenge is not going to be met. It's not going to be a problem that's solved. So these are the things that we want to add to the event, things that are genuine challenges that impact passengers, and that need to be solved. And we see the platform as a way to push the industry in that direction and do a little bit of lobbying.
Absolutely. And then in terms of how do you keep the momentum post the event? So the event's over, it gets done, you have some of the recordings, things like that. How do you keep the momentum so it keeps staying up till the next event? How do you keep the interaction going? What are you thinking in that space?
I think momentum's a good word to use because, we're an event that happens once a year, so people might not think about the event until the month before. So we do have to keep momentum throughout the year. And this is something that I do, the team does, where we work on the event 12 months of the year. I think that's kind of what differentiates us from some of the organizers, where we just really hone in on that one event year on year. And we have those phone calls every day with our customers, with the airlines, with the airports, just to keep us front of mind. And obviously the marketing, the content that we get from the event that goes 3 months post event. We have a lot of the interviews, the panels. I have an editor who goes out and meets with the CEOs, goes to other events, and we just want to stay front of mind. We want to give people useful information. I think it's you see a lot of content out there that might be a little bit too salesy per se. We want to give people genuine insights, and I think that's driven by our guidelines that we use.
Yeah.
Whether it's for the event, whether it's for our newsletters, we stick to kind of editorial style topics, and yeah, we just keep engaged with the industry throughout the year. We have different touch points. The initial touch point would be if you're a speaker, for example. We'll say to you, okay, great to have you joining us this year. Here are the dates for next year. Keep us in mind. And then probably 2 to 3 months later, we'll start doing some deep dive research, and we'll chat to a lot of the previous speakers and really understand what are the trends, what are the challenges for you in the next 12 months. Because the tricky thing is, we're writing this agenda 8-9 months
in advance.
Yeah. So you need to really capture the kind of industry zeitgeist, in advance.
And a lot changes in that time. Regulation changes, and mergers, acquisitions. There could be all sorts, right? So that changes a lot of stuff. And I guess then last question from my end on this is, what is it in the next World Aviation Festival that we can expect to be a bit more fresh, a bit more different to the last?
Yeah, I think look, there's something that we really focus on, and that's serendipity at the event. You know,
Yeah.
we want to create those serendipitous moments, and the way we do that is, you know, not necessarily by having formal set schedules. It's a festival. You know, people can go where they want. They can do what they want. We want to create that kind of vibe where it's free, it's open, and we create a lot of networking through the receptions, through the app. We had thousands of meetings booked just through the networking app, and it really helps people structure their time over the 3 days. So we're keeping things fresh. We're keeping a lot of the on-floor experiential stuff. We're going to advance that to make sure that people can, have a bit of fun. We're going to have zones where people can chill out if they don't want to do networking at that time, or they don't want to see a session. They want to just be, because like you mentioned, everyone's different, and you might be a fierce 3-day networker, but there might be others that they do half a day, they need a break.
Yeah.
So you want to create those kind of safe spaces as well. And yeah, this year we've got 13 tracks of content over 3 days, 600 speakers, 5,000 plus attendees.
Wow.
So it's really, it's making sure that the community is serviced, the right people are there. We work extensively throughout the year on making sure that we have the right profiles in attendance. And I hope that you feel that, Raza, when you go to the event, it's your people there, it's essentially your community within the, because we're in, there's a niche of a niche of a niche.
Yeah, absolutely. No, there is. As a great thing I say about this event is, yes, they're from the same industry, but you've got diversity. You've got people who are from different backgrounds, people I can relate to, people who I can feel are mentors for me. I'm coming from a South Asian background, and I can see people from different backgrounds that speak the same native language as I do. I can communicate with them about what's going on with that. It's just a melting pot.
Yeah.
It is a festival. That's what I love, because then in other you're just talking about industry and stuff, but then having that where you have diversity of thinking, personality, female, males, and just differing level of seniority there. It's really amazing to have that, and being able to reach out a lot more people, more open to conversation, which is brilliant. And then the other thing that will be coming to the event, which we've held off from saying because we've been waiting for this moment, is the Flying High Club will be live shooting podcasts from the World Aviation Festival.
Yes.
Which is a massive milestone for us, but to be such a prestigious event with 5,000 people around, we will be streaming with the team live from the event, shooting podcasts with a range of people. We were, lucky enough to spring this conversation. I can share this little story, which would be great. We actually spoke to set this up. I want to say at the start of this year, and I was on a flight to Doha, and I was talking to you over Wi-Fi to be able to do this.
Wow.
You wouldn't have known because we shared the links of the videos and things like that, and how do we want to work it out. And to be fair, I got minimal resistance from you, Daniel. It was just explain to me, how do you want to go about it? What do you think? What do you need from me? Love the idea. Okay, let's go and kind of do it.
Yeah.
I was really shooting my shot over there. I didn't think anything would come of it. And then I land and I'm connected to the team. And then I speak to the team. I explain the setup, what I need. And then a week and a half later, we're ready to announce we've got a partnership. Yeah. It was that amazing because I think these conversations to this level kind of need to happen on camera, where you can have, and I don't know if you know, we peel back just that layer. We don't just stay at the front. We want to go detailed. Tell me how you felt at the time, that sort of stuff, because that's relatable. And one of the key things we set this up of, we're in such an amazing industry. I love aviation. Everyone who comes on here loves aviation. Our production team love aviation. They love hearing about it. It is such a great industry, but I just think I have a feeling that people think it's not the most attractive anymore. and we will lose talent.
Yeah.
I want to attract talent, and this is the mechanism I'm using. And I want to tell people that you can be a part of this industry in various different guisos. And that's the storytelling that I want to tell.
Yeah.
And a lot of the previous guests that we have are going to be there. They'll hopefully be joining us, new guests. So it will hopefully bring a new aspect and dynamic of exposing what the World Aviation Festival is, what goes about it, all that sort of stuff. So we look forward to having you there and opening and having a quick chat when you have the breather and you've opened up and done your opening speech and you're a bit more calmer.
For sure.
And shoot some great content which we can put out for the rest of the remaining year to keep that momentum going for you. I think it will be an amazing thing, and we'll have a setup similar to this, and hopefully the start of many, and we'll see how it goes. But it was thank you so much for allowing that to happen. But it was such a great achievement for us to do in such a short time since we've started as well.
No, thank you. It's something that we've been talking about, to be honest, for a couple of years, where we wanted a good podcast partner. And it was quite, bring it back to serendipitous, when you make contact. And I think it's the perfect partner for us. You talk about all of the stuff that we talk about at World Aviation Festival. And the format is great. The sort of informal manner of the podcast, the way you get out that little bit extra. I think it's something that it adds another string to our bow as well, and it's complementary to WAF this year. So real pleasure to be working with you, Raza.
Amazing. And I think this is the perfect way now to transition, Dan, into what our revered segment, a lot of people give us a lot of comments from, is our quick fire round.
Okay.
So I'm going to give you 2 minutes to grab some water while I line up the questions. But in short, I'll ask you a couple of simple questions, one-line responses or single-word responses, yes, no, whatever is there. And then we'll go slightly deeper from there. But nothing controversial, just opinions as you need to. But let me know when you're ready. No, oh, well, maybe. I might ask for your favorite something. But yeah, let me know when you're ready and we'll fire away.
Yeah, let's do it.
Cool. Chicken or beef?
Chicken.
Aisle or window?
Oof, that's a tough one. Window.
Favorite holiday destination?
Thailand.
Favorite conference destination?
Oof, Amsterdam or Lisbon.
Not London then.
That's a cop-out.
Most interesting event that you've been to?
I can't say my own event.
You can be any.
That's a tough one. I would say World Aviation Festival last year. Honestly, I would say I'd agree with your feedback on that, Raza.
Well, there you go. Are you a early lounger or a late dasher?
Early lounger.
Any particular reason? Can't handle the stress?
Just can't take it.
Favorite airline?
Oof, that's a very tough question. I fly. Actually, yeah, I have an answer.
I'll
for
save
this.
you. I'd plead the fifth on this one.
No, I'd say it depends. It depends who I fly that year, and it changes year on year. But I would say recently Singapore Airlines this year, because I've had some very good experiences with them.
Favorite or distinct moment from one of the World Aviation Festivals that you've done that sticks to in your mind?
I would say that first panel with Ryanair, Norwegian, KLM, IAG. I think that's always stuck in my mind, just because it was essentially Michael O'Leary taking the piss out of everybody on stage.
I wish I was there.
I'll send you the video.
What about the worst moment?
Worst moment would probably be, the 2021 event. I think at the peak of the first day, when we had all sessions running at the same time, there was just a lot of noise, a lot to deal with, and it was very hard to move forward there.
You're on board. There's an empty seat next to you. If you can choose any CEO to travel on a long-haul flight with, for whatever reason, who would it be and why?
That's a tough question. Could I pick the whole row?
It's an expensive ticket you're picking out. Well, let's broaden it. Anyone, not even an airline CEO, anyone of interest.
I'd actually just because it's topical, I'd like to pick the brain of our new Prime Minister, actually.
Keir Starmer.
Keir Starmer, yeah. I think I'd have a lot of questions, and I'd be interested to hear his kind of vision for the country.
Most rewarding moment you've had doing the work that you do?
Most rewarding would be, I think it's the most rewarding, to be honest, it comes from the charity partners that we work with. I think giving them exposure is very important. So, getting them on stage and helping out various organizations, I think that's always quite rewarding. We work with the Flying Eye Hospital. We've worked with them. We've worked with I think it's Wings of Change this year with KLM. So there's a lot of those non-profits that we give time to, because I think it's important to give them stage as well.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Your most embarrassing moment doing a World Aviation Festival?
I'm just thinking of the speech and mics not working, tripping over the stage.
You've done it?
I've done that a few times.
Oh,
yeah, falling flat on my face. There's too many.
One piece of advice you'd give to your younger self?
I would tell my younger self to take a breath. That's what I would say. I'd say take a breath before responding. Take a breath before acting. Just think about your actions before you move forward. I think that's quite important. And enjoy it more, because those first years of doing those events, I don't think I enjoyed it for the first few years, but learn to enjoy it. And that's come later in life, but I wish I could have enjoyed it more at that time, for sure.
Brilliant. Well, that brings the end to the round. Thank you so much again, Daniel. It has been an absolute pleasure to even just to get you in face to face, knowing the background, the detail. I think this is hopefully the start of a great relationship that we have, talking on with the podcast. Even in general, I'm more than happy for you to reach out at any time. A lot of people who don't know who come on this is, we always ask, and we don't ask it on camera, but for you I will, is our previous guests we had in a WhatsApp group, which is called the Flying High Club Lounge.
Okay.
And as you can imagine, it's made up of all the previous guests, and it becomes this mini network of opportunity. So whenever you need anything from that community, everyone is happy to contribute, help you out. So I'd love to add you from that. Even if you want to pick their brains or anything like that, you go ahead and you do that. But that's what we're about: building connection, building network, just to make that industry greater. If that benefits anyone in any way, we're more than happy for that to happen. Yeah. So welcome to the lounge.
I'd love to be a part of it. Thank you.
Absolutely. And we're going to put a link in the description below. Use the code FHC15 for discount on the World Aviation Festival, which will be coming to you in October. Get your tickets fast. I don't think there's that many remaining. So click the link below, and we hope to see you there and hopefully be a part of the event. It was great seeing you. Please like and subscribe below, and we'll catch you next time.